Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.
And good evening. How is everyone today?
Pretty good.
Hello. I'm
Chat,
good, thanks.
we have apparently been raided early by Yarny, so chat is already hopping. So just a couple of quick warnings ahead of time. I mentioned earlier I have an absolutely blinding headache, so if I'm a little bit off kilter, I hope everyone will forgive me. I did finally get headache meds on board, so hopefully they will kick in soon. And the pineapple pizza war has already begun. We haven't even gotten intros done. So I will tell you, I told everyone I would go through the entire menu of the place that I normally get my pizza from. The last one I have left to do that does not have pork on it was blueberry and ricotta, and I just couldn't do it tonight. I will do it. I will do it next week, but we just stuck with tomato and spinach tonight because I just couldn't handle it. And Eraserhead is already threatening to put people in timeout for liking pineapple. These are all the things we usually go through over the course of 2 hours. We're getting them out of the way in the first 10 minutes.
Speed run.
The other thing is, I was out running errands just before this show, and as I came home, I realized that the cable companies are out working on my lines in the rain. So, so far, so good, not to jinx us, but if all of a sudden this show ends very abruptly, you will know why. So Mando will be joining us I assume shortly. She has that whole unfortunate work thing going on. But as soon as she gets home, she will be with us and we'll hop in. And in the meantime, we have Greg and Dave. And if you both would, we'll start with Greg. If you want to do your intro and in case anyone here doesn't know who you are.
Which is probably likely. No reason why anyone should know who I am, really. So my name's Greg. Got a YouTube channel, Cadath Gaming, with some computer gaming content on it. But I got into gaming in the mid-70s. So I had three elder brothers who were all into board games and role-playing games, various role-playing games, not just Dungeons and Dragons. And we grew up sharing a room, so I was around them playing all the time. So I grew up playing Risk, World Conquest sort of mode with my three brothers. So that was a baptism of fire. I got used to losing, which hasn't really changed. I never pretended to be brilliant at the game, so I do enjoy them though. But I got into role playing really big with AD&D when the rule books came over to the UK, and basically I played my ass off for about 5 years, or maybe longer. Played through all of the AD&D campaigns that were out by TSL with first edition, but then I switched to Call of Cthulhu and Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay when that came out, the grim dark aesthetic and the D100 skill-based sort of approaches and the professions with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay really appealed to me, and the deadly combat as well. So it really made people think twice before getting into a fight, and made them sort of think in a different way to a Dungeons and Dragons game or a D20 rule system. So, and then I kind of got into collecting a bunch of role-playing games. So I've got about,
I do
I
have
don't
to
know.
say, you started with about the two most masochistic role playing games are possible.
Well, we like my eldest brother started playing Empire of the Petal Throne and Metamorphosis Alpha, which was the first science fiction role-playing game. And then I played Dungeons and Dragons, Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, and Gamma World and Star Frontiers in the 70s, and then sort of progressed on to Call of Cthulhu and Warhammer as sort of the two main role-playing games, Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, which I still collect now. I've got there's like 3 books that are due to come out. I think I've got everything for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay because one day I'll get another gaming group. But,
Well,
and I've also done things like the Elite Dangerous role-playing game, which I've got here. If you know Elite Dangerous, the computer game, they made a full role-playing game system for that, and I knew I got to know the company that made this and the developers for it, and they made me an ambassador GM for their rule system. So I did several conventions, running games at conventions, and I'm also part of the Dungeon Crawl Classics UK road crew for Goodman Games, although I have yet to run a con game because COVID. So I didn't bother
yeah, that
going after.
did put quite the damper on in-person in-person
It
gaming.
killed the con scene for me, really. It's just every time I've been back since, it's just been rubbish. So bit of
Really,
a shame.
that's a shame. Um, yeah, a lot of the ones around here tend to be very small, and I'm not crazy about how they treat their game masters, so I tend to not even attend as a player.
Yeah, when
And
people started introducing those red card rules and stuff, I was like, "No way, I'm not running the game for
I
snowflakes."
looked at I looked at the regulations for GaryCon the other day, and I was like, "Oh, this would be like old school gaming and, none of that stuff." They have the harshest rules possible. Even if you are running an adult only game, you cannot run horror because you're not allowed to have any graphic bloodshed or body horror or anything that might
So
upset anyone.
yeah, that's
And I
all
was
my
like, if it's a
games.
horror game and you're very clear about what's going on, that seems not like a great idea. And even if you're running adult only, if it is marked as adult only, you must explain to everyone in the group exactly what's going to happen
Yeah,
in your
all these
game that
trigger
they might be
warnings.
uncomfortable. Well, and you have to tell them the whole plot of your game and what might make them uncomfortable. And I was
Yeah,
like, well, that kind
exactly.
of defeats the purpose of the whole game.
And ruins
And
it for everyone else at the table.
well,
Yeah,
and
spoilers.
how do you know what the players are going to do? Like
Oh yeah. Well, I
the
imagine the
players
liability issues with those cons is probably pretty steep as well.
I
Yeah,
don't know. I
well,
feel like if you go into an adult only game that is marked as horror, seriously, I mean adult only, you should know what you're getting into.
yeah. I mean, I've been to conventions that have been like this one in the UK here called Continuum, which I think is every year now, but it used to be every 2 years. So I made a point of going as much as possible, and that was all Call of Cthulhu, and it was organised by the Cult of Keepers, which was a British or a European group of Call of Cthulhu games masters that
Sounds
would
quite
work.
sinister.
They would work together um, to develop these amazing scenarios. And one time we actually played um, an adventure based on the Great Gatsby, but there were 8 groups, and the plot sort of basically ended up we were all playing these characters at various dinner parties in different rooms, and the host was calling on Nyarlathotep and basically intended to sacrifice everybody, but had basically created a time it creates a time loop in the plot. But then the games masters would come in and like in white coats, and they'd pass a name to the games master, and he'd pick out one of the players, and then they would be taken out of the room blindfolded, moved around this room, have weird sounds played at them, and wind blown over them, or be brushed with feathers, hear chanting and stuff, and then you'd go into another room and sit at the spare chair there, and your character would be the same, but you may be a woman, or it would be you would be playing a different character, but you'd have the memories from the previous table, and so all of the various groups had to start working together once they'd figured out that people were swapping from room to room. We had to communicate with one another, and that was an amazing experience. It just took all night, and in the end, we all got together for sort of like a big sort of debrief where there were about 40 people from all playing groups. It was amazing. Probably
Yeah,
the best role playing I've ever had.
those can be great if you have good game masters. The problem is, and one of the reasons I'm not a fan of 5e, is I think it has made worse players and worse game masters.
Oh, we could have a separate show about that.
Yeah,
I,
this show usually devolves a bit anyway. So
I mean, I'm not so hot on the later editions of D&D because I just haven't played them, and I never really enjoyed a D20 system. I did play Star Wars D20 for a bit, but the mechanics just ruin it for me.
I ran 5e a few times, and I grew up on the old D&D and I loved it. But I discovered that players who could play other games and who had played other games and who were great as players in other games, you put them in 5e and immediately they turned into whiny crybabies. Um, they got really mad if their character got so much as hurt, forget killed. And they really just expected it was going to be easy.
Wow. Well, if you're playing a Call of Cthulhu campaign, you're recommended to roll at least 3 characters that you'll be happy to play during the campaign, and expect, maybe the first one might get back for the last adventure in a wheelchair after electroshock therapy and drug treatments for maybe 2 years.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu characters are basically candy wrapper characters.
Mm-hmm.
You enjoy the inside, you peel them off, you throw them away.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Paranoia, where one of the
Mm-hmm.
few games where you can die during character generation. So
There
anyway,
was another one actually. It was a science fiction. It might be Star Trek, like the early Star Trek. Oh no, Traveller. It was Traveller.
yeah, there are a
You
couple.
could
There are a
go
couple of
through
them, but
a whole
Paranoia
hour.
is the one that's kind of famous, I think.
Yeah. I have that down here somewhere.
Dave,
Yes.
tell us a little bit about your early adventures in gaming.
My family was very big on classic games, and I don't mean like Monopoly. We had like chess, of course, but also backgammon, Mancala. We had sort of those sorts of games in our household, but we also, of course, had Monopoly and hated each other for it. With 6 players, it is terrible. It's insufferable with 6 players. But for after that, my dad did have a pretty good sized collection of war games. He was big into the Avalon Hill games, but also he had Tactics 2, Battle of Midway, Blitzkrieg, which we also tried out with him, and me and my brother played. It was kind of a very deep 2-player sort of experience. But I got into RPGs with MechWarrior in middle school as a way to make friends, and let me tell you, that's a terrible way to make friends. Middle school in the 90s, they did not take they did not like making friends through gameplay very much, unless it's like computer games, video games these days, I guess, that sort of thing. But as bad as it worked in middle school, it works great these days. I've been an off and off GM or DM for a long time. But actually with my current game group, I've been with my current game group for a hair over 4 years now. Coming up on the end of our 3rd Star Wars related campaign with the narrative dice system, which you also have with Genesys, title of the episode. And we're actually already discussing what to play next. Oh, also I make pizza.
Well, you got to have both sides of the slice and dice.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Now
I
you.
decided it was too late for pizza. 11 o'clock, I'll probably get
Oh
indigestion
yeah.
Hey,
again.
I just told Big Ship all times are pizza times.
Yep.
That's like, when people say, "Is it too early to start drinking?"
Yeah. Now your chat debates pineapple, which is fine. I understand that debate. I think it actually works well depending on the sauce. You really need a robust sauce to kind of even out the sweetness of the pineapple. But I lived in Germany for a year and a half, and they will put tuna on pizza.
Hmm.
Greg, you're nodding. I
Well,
guess you've observed that before.
Yeah, I've had that
Oh,
with
okay.
some shrimps and like yeah, it's basically a seafood pizza, but they yeah get a
Yeah, seafood pizza.
can of flake tuna and just chuck that on. It's not sushi grade.
And you mentioned blueberry ricotta pizza, and it makes me wonder. I mean, that doesn't sound too impossible as a good thing. I mean, cheesecake, you
sa-
put blueberries on cheesecake all the time.
well, it sounds to me like dessert. It does not
Mm,
Yeah,
sound
I
to
was
me
going to
like
say it
it
sounds like
doesn't sound
dessert.
to me like supper.
yeah.
I think that's I don't know, like, pizzas are great because you can have breakfast pizza and dessert pizza and everything else, but that just definitely sounds, dessert pizza-esque. It's there has been a debate at one point about anchovy pizza, and the interesting thing was that the pineapple pizza hated anchovies and the anchovy pizza hated people hated pineapples. So, I will be interested to see if the tuna we have somebody in favor of tuna and pineapple pizza for the win.
Well, I think the insult
Oof.
is they call it Hawaiian. So
Yeah.
The issue I have is that one, I like pineapple but not hot, and two, I don't eat pork, and pineapple on pizza always seems to go with ham.
Ah.
So just finding a straight pineapple pizza does not seem to be a thing.
Do you not
yeah,
eat
I
pork for
can't.
the nitrates, or just
Uh,
personal choice?
so neither my husband or I eat pork,
Okay.
and there are differing reasons. Chat, you might want to plug your ears. Um, he does not eat pork because genetically it is too close to people,
Okay.
and that creeps him out.
Okay.
I do not eat pork because I will not eat anything that I would not butcher myself. And having raised pigs, I am uncomfortable with butchering something that might have a higher IQ than me.
Ah. Ew. Hmm. I
Um,
understand one of those two reasons, but okay.
which one don't you understand?
I mean, yeah, yeah, I know pigs have some intelligence. They're kind of like, uh, I figure like canine feline level of intelligence, though, not like
No, they are
people
actually
level.
they are actually significantly
Really?
higher than canines. Yeah.
Ah,
They have tested out as being on average as intelligent as a 8 to 10 year old child.
interesting.
So, and the ones I had at about 6 months old could do teamwork to escape from their pen. And I know adults that couldn't do that.
Yeah, TikTok has found
So
his next audience. Then
We'll
you
be
got to go for the pig
replaced.
audience.
We're going to be replaced by a race of sentient pigs.
Yep, you
yeah,
don't need humans.
I have been told that, that was all the more reason to eat them so that they don't take over. But
That explains Alex Jones' pig people theories. He must think the combination is possible.
I
Let's not
don't
talk about him anymore, though.
I don't even want to know.
Okay.
I'm gonna say hello to the chat real quick. It's already, like I said, it's already really hopping in there. Farv was here briefly. Unfortunately, he's got a stream tonight, so he wanted to just stop in and say hello to everyone. Uh, Rio is, as always, my first one here. Uh, Legatus announced the Yarny raid incoming,
Here.
so that was awesome. Big Ship, Big Ship started the pineapple off immediately.
Ooh.
Eraserhead is our super mod. He is the magician with the links. Hunter is here to join us. He was on this show a few weeks ago. Has been in the chat since. He's great. Rachel says, hello, fellow nerds.
Hello.
Hello.
Unlike Lord Toxic, who will occasionally show up at the very end of the stream just to say nerds, period. Mando's just letting us know that she's listening in. She's listening in, so she hears all while we can't talk about her before she gets here. That's what she's.
I can.
That's...
I could leave before she gets here, and I can say what I want.
let's all make automotive sound effects to throw her off. Wee-oo, wee-oo.
Careful, last time I was supposed to be on a show with her, she got a flat tire. So
Oh no.
I told her no flat tires allowed.
Blah, 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 blah. Oh, there it goes again.
Wormy Spoons is here, as is Stunt Gonzo.
Ah, fellow Muppet.
Yes. Prophetic is here. I was going to make a joke about the fact that I want to add a Muppet donkey to my collection, but I think nobody would get that joke. There is a French donkey, and there are only like 78 of them in the United States, and they literally look like Muppets. And Grizzled Entertainment.
Yeah,
Welcome.
to serve man.
Starting off strong.
R.I.P. James Earl Jones, who played one of the aliens in that segment.
Hey, Jack. I didn't even see you pop in. It must have been when I was at the top of the list.
I just got here. I think.
And dinner must be over.
Yep.
Jai usually gets here after he's made dinner, so... Yes, Muppet representation. So, while we are going around and Greg is talking about his board game, I have an assignment for the chat. We are going to be having baby lambs and baby goats soon. And we always pick a theme, one for each group of animal. We've done candy names. We've done numerous different types of plant names. I sort of talked my husband out of doing Japanese monster names one year. But we pick a theme every year for the goats and then a different one for the lambs, because they all have to be named in order to be registered. So I would like some ideas from the chat about reasonable keyword. I'm sure somebody's not going to stick to that, but reasonable ideas about what you think would... Oh, Lord of the Rings. That's a good idea. So the issue with Lovecraftian horror names is that we are hopefully, fingers crossed, going to have lots of females. And that's the issue with Japanese monster names. There aren't a lot of, like, lamb-esque names. So has to be something that has lots of girl names and lots of boy names. We're expecting hopefully about 7 goats and about 12 lambs. So there is your assignment while we're chatting. Greg, you built a board game.
I did.
And
yes.
I need to dig out pictures here. Give me just a moment.
There's some of the anime names.
I might need to actually. I just took those pictures because I was looking at my Google Drive, and the ones I had were not shaded. So I was like, "Oh, I'll just set it up on the table and take some photos and send them to you." So those are actually what the board looks like in its final form, because I'm not developing it anymore. But they're downstairs. I can run down and get them if you want. To look at any particular tiles or how the geometry works in them. But I did also want to show, I'll get to that in a minute. But yeah, so basically I was stuck at home during the pandemic along with everyone else. And about that time, Valheim came out on PC, and it was a smash hit. And it was just the game I'd been looking for. And I played the absolute crap out of it. and I think I've got 1,000 hours in it now. But back then, so say I probably had half that time. By about 3 months of playing it non-stop every day, I developed tennis elbow in both of my arms. So I was walking around like a T-Rex. Couldn't pick up a kettle or anything. Couldn't use the computer. And I couldn't play Valheim anymore. But I really wanted to scratch the itch of Valheim. So I thought what I would do is try and make a board game that I could pitch to the studio to produce, because to me it was a million pound idea, the board game, and actually the subsequent Game Found or crowdfunding campaign blew through that. I think they got over €1.5 million. It was very, very successful, and I did back it. So, but yeah, I got to know early on, almost as soon as the game came out, I got to know one of the development team, the art guy, Robin, and he would stream Valheim on Twitch, and I joined him on his stream a couple of times, and we would chat on Discord occasionally, and so I, having not been able to play anymore, I just decided to start developing the game idea, and the board, because Valheim is a flat Earth kind of world, and I had done a degree in cartography, so I kind of approached it from a map projection idea that if it was a flat Earth, it would be a projection of a hemisphere. So I looked for map projections that worked with that as a sort of a net or a base geometry for the world, and I looked for interlocking geometry in the way the pieces join together, and I found two sets of interlocking geometries which allowed you to build this tile-based world map, which you can randomize completely.
Yeah,
So
I
you
noticed. I
actually
noticed
have.
your. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, go on.
Oh, your corner and edge alignment for those things is really good. That's a big challenge with these. You move them around, they don't
Yeah,
necessarily line up anymore.
that's why there's only one of them.
Oh, okay.
This is, and why I never sent it to Irongate, because they already announced their partnership with Mood Studios. So I
Okay.
was like, well, I could use this geometry for another circular design, like a volcanic crater going from the outside to the center, and it would still be randomizable. So basically, the idea is that there is in Valheim there's a series of biomes where you get different resources, and what I wanted to do was have a sandbox adventure approach, just like the game. So what I wanted to do was make a cardboard distillation of the role playing, the computer game experience, and in order to do that, you needed the world that you could explore. So the board design is that these tiles would be laid flat, laid the other way up, with clouds in a specific pattern that would mean that you couldn't tell which tile was which, or what sort of what threats you might be coming up against if there were specific tiles that had things that would spawn on it, perhaps. And you would be able to choose your route from the central island, which, if you could, if you zoom in a little bit on that, you can see that I did it in various perspectives. So you have a perspective, kind of 45-degree angle view of your settlement at the bottom of the base island there, in the central area, and then going into a slightly more sort of perspective map, like a medieval design, for the rest of the landscape. But the outer islands are drawn from the perspective that you're viewing it from sitting around the outside of the circle looking into the world. So you feel very immersed when you look at the artwork. And I thought that was really important. So all the shadows and everything, they extend to the outside of the map. And then you would have a separate game board which would represent your house and garden with there are board games that print cards on sort of clear plastic um,
Ah,
cards with good, with full color artwork on them. So what I was going to do was create a set of furniture, upgrades, and so forth that you could put in these transparent cards within the board of your homestead and upgrade it as you do with the computer game. So yeah, so depending on what island you'd go to, there would be a an adventure deck that would be various encounters, the enemies that you'd find in there, ruins, and you could push your luck as you moved around. You could spend the move points that you. So it's basically a dice action placement mechanic for movement and combat. For movement, and you'd roll the dice, and then you'd get that many hours to allocate to gathering resources on the base island, movement in the wider world. So you'd land after sailing your ship through various ocean encounter areas. You'd draw the ocean deck as you move from space to space, draw ocean decks, and there would be sea monster threats in there, or weather encounters and things like that, and then land in the various islands, and the biomes would have their own decks, which you could just peruse through as you go, push your luck as you move from place to place, drawing a hand of cards, which would then be various enemies that would be attacked as a group. So you would then have to manage ranged combat versus melee combat and defense. Um, I made a system for food and potions to buff those, and then equipment with the transparent cards that you could overlay on your character board and upgrade the appearance of your character as you went along as well. So it was really interactive, and I loved the idea, which is why I've hung on to it. But unfortunately, yeah, I mean, I developed the artwork kind of going back and forth with the art guy from Valheim, Robin, and he encouraged me to do the work. But then, so Irongate was independent as they developed the game, and then they were got into a deal with Coffee Stain Studios as their publisher. Coffee Stain is owned by Embracer Group, and Embracer Group were buying up lots and lots of different IPs. And part of the Embracer Group is Asmodee, the board game production company from Europe, one of the biggest in the world. And they were looking for synergies between their IPs, from their computer game properties to inform the board games and also comics and various other things. That was their vision, to create spin-offs of various IPs, and they'd cross-pollinate. So pitching that idea to various people at different levels in Asmodee, Coffee Stain, I didn't even get a single reply from any email. And that's even knowing people on the team at Irongate. And it became apparent after a while that they had already got a working relationship established with the board game company that made Deep Rock Galactic, the adaptation of the computer game for
ah,
that. And it was them that, because they had an existing, I assume, because they had an existing relationship with them, that the decision was made further up in Embracer Group that they were going to do that. It was kind of not in Irongate's control whatsoever. It was more Coffee Stain and above. And, it's totally understandable because I've never published a board game. And, it would be a massive pain to do like a crowdfunding project for something that big and do it justice, even though I've spent half my life on Kickstarter, it seems. And I've got another room with board games that are all sort of Kickstarter deluxe editions. I went a bit nuts. So I wanted it to be of a decent standard. But as the crowdfunding worked out, they've done a really massive campaign. Well, thank
I
you.
mean, there have been a lot of compliments on that map, and it's definitely unique compared to what tends to be out there. When did you develop this?
So it would have been 2020, about 4 or 5 months in 2020. And there's a dice-based combat system with range combat, melee combat, with defensive dice as well. And I also started creating a magic system for it. But
Hmm.
yeah, it's got some good ideas in the box that could be repurposed for other games. Like I tried to come up with some kind of geometry in that tile-based idea to do something about gravitational slingshots or orbits and create some kind of space game. There's one called Pulsar, and some numbers, big numbers. I don't know, 2577 or something. But that's um, a space-based game where you're using various orbits around black holes or pulsars to sort of slingshot your way around the board. That was interesting. I'd try and do something like that with it, or because I'm an archaeologist by profession originally,
Oh, that's
um,
cool.
I kind of like the Indiana Jones idea of the lost volcano crater with some ancient treasures in it, and you can explore that by you know, revealing the tiles as you go into that volcano. So there's some ideas there we can work with, but funding or an interested publisher really.
You know, there's a lot of prediction that games are about to get very expensive because most major game companies publish in China, and they've
Mm-hmm.
all decided that for a 10% tariff, they have to double the price of their games, which tells you something about the companies.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in in my mind, a 10% increase does not equal a 100% increase. Um, but I think Norseman had a really good point that if you could find somebody with a 3D printer capable of designing um, like the program to like 3D print that. I don't know how those files come into being, but I know there are scanners you can get that will sort of scan items and then turn it into a file and then you just print them back out again. It may become reasonable to at least, as a limited run, start UK or US
Mm.
printing and crowdfunding it that way. Just like,
Well,
the
there is
first the
there is
first hundred
another
people
idea.
who try this get a copy.
There was another idea that so one of the inspirations for my approach to the Valheim board game was another Viking board game called Vikingar, which is not very well known at all, but that also has a circular board. But that was developed, I think, by a Canadian couple of brothers and crowdfunded, and I really enjoy it. It's flawed, but it's a Viking adventure game where you're moving around a map and so forth. I would be down for doing a second edition of Vikingar, but with a reimagined board mechanic for that, because there were some problems with the board design for them. They had big wedges that fanned out from a kind of cardboard star in the middle, so it was
Mhm.
you couldn't reveal one wedge without seeing to the edge of the map. So you could see all the territory. That was a problem. So I fixed that problem by chopping it up and using a different approach. But it
Yeah,
was an
I
interesting, intellectual exercise when I was sort of going stir crazy in the cabin and not being able to use my arms. I had to learn to draw that map because I'd never drawn anything before. I did a bit of technical drawing as part of my archaeology, but that was, you know, measured technical drawing, whereas that was all drawn, freehand. So I had to learn how to draw wood grain, and I had to learn how to draw um, trees. But because I had, my arms were really hurting, I had limited mobility at the time. I was like, right, I need to go Japanese and use the least number of strokes for each tree um, and shadow, and that made it really atmospheric. I sort of took a medieval map kind of aesthetic and tried to apply it, and it worked really well. So it's a shame. It's a shame it didn't get picked up because I'd have been
I
rich.
I don't know that anybody gets rich off board games these days,
Nah.
but I mean, obviously the chat is full of people that love games, and they all seem to really like that board. So I hope you
Well,
kind of
thanks, guys.
keep moving along with it because it looks interesting. And like I said, it it's so hard to find unique games now, whether it's board games or video games or anything else. They all kind of look the same. You know, they did the Sony live stream thing recently, and we were looking at it going, everything here looks like either Dark Souls or Final Fantasy.
Well, I did the math with that because it's got the central island and then three rings of eight around the outside, and if you like multiply all of those combinations together, it produces something like 123 billion, 64 million plus different combinations of possible boards. So you could, in theory, play a unique every game you played of that, or rather every game that was ever played on Earth throughout the history of the lifetime of that game would be played on a unique board.
Yeah.
Because the map is still definitely functional. You could use that to run like a detailed just one detailed component of Valheim and make that a completely separate game, but kind of scale it down to one part of Valheim. I've not played Valheim myself, but I understand it's very sandbox, very like Viking survival sort of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if you just did say the seafaring component of it, you could have a seafaring based game uh, that by scaling it down, it's actually much more attractive because trying to implement the every like a board game equivalent of every option in Valheim is a
Yeah,
very big
you
deal
can't do it.
for a publisher. But if you just stick to one component and you can
Well, I,
scale down the price, and
so
so
that talking to the developers and being a massive fanboy for the game, it was hey Tomby, um, it was they said their design principles were ABC: action, building, and combat. Sorry, adventure, building, and combat.
uh,
So I wanted to capture all three elements in a board game where you were developing your home to make you more powerful, and you therefore create gear to make your character more powerful, to enable you to travel further, and to you couldn't actually you know travel further. You'd have to then camp or stage your travel through the world, which could potentially run you low on resources. You might end up in a risky situation. That's why there was a push your luck element with it.
ooh,
I like the push your luck movement and encounters. Oh, I've got 5 movement left. I'll draw 5 cards and see what happens. Some of them might be ruins, some of them might be benign, or you might draw 5 cards that would have a troll and maybe a total of 3 or 4 skeletons and some grey dwarfs, which you would then have to deal with. So you're really, you know, putting yourself in a difficult position, and you can die. So you can leave your stuff out there and still have to try and get. There were various mechanisms with the game that I was trying to sort of take echoes from Valheim. If I was to push it further in any meaningful way, I would need to, completely rebrand any world, or if it was just you could call it Land of the Fallen, the Viking survival game. That's not Valheim at all.
yeah.
But it's not. It's in no way similar to the design philosophy that they went with for the actual board game, which is going to be released soon. Which they took a sort of a modular tile based, where you have a single terrain tile, which is like you're going into swamp. So you turn that over, and it's like you're moving around one big island rather than moving across the world and navigating from place to place. So it's more of a microcosm. And with that game, you pick a boss that you're going to cooperatively challenge, or a couple of bosses that you're going to sort of deal with, and then maybe play several sessions with different bosses to progress the game as a cooperative sort of thing.
Well, you know, one of the things I've noticed about a lot of current board games is that they're all cooperative based now.
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of makes sense because, it used to be you were playing games with your friends or with your family when the power went out, and if you lost and you were out of the game early, you just went to your room and did something else. Whereas if you're playing with friends, which is the more common method nowadays, it's kind of a bummer if you're out of the game, soon. But I happen to be a fairly competitive person. I like competitive games, and as much as I love my friends, they're terrible to do cooperative games with because they all suck at it.
The
So,
alpha player phenomenon.
uh, not really.
Not quite.
I don't actually like running games. It's just that none of my friends have an attention span,
That
and
yeah.
they will cheerfully admit that.
Yeah, sitting someone
Um,
down with, say, like Forbidden Island or Pandemic, especially if you're used to winning and you're with a new player who's is it with working with entry level strategies or suboptimal strategies, it can be kind of frustrating, and that's resulted in the what some people call the alpha player phenomenon, the player who kind of knows what needs to be done, but is kind of stuck frustratingly waiting for everyone to run their suboptimal turns.
well, have either of you ever played Mountains of Madness?
No.
Oh,
Wait, is that the
Um,
card game? No, no, it's not a
no,
card game.
it's a cooperative board game that is sort of Lovecraftian, and you have to climb the mountain. And as you climb the mountain, you pick up more and more insanity cards, and you can't tell anyone what the insanity is. You just have to act it out.
Yeah.
And in order to not get more insanity, you have to work together to kind of stave off the issues causing it. Um, the
looking
Yarnwitch
it
says,
up.
"I have no attention span. What were we talking about?"
Oh, is it the Eldritch Horror? There's an Eldritch Horror expansion,
Um,
Mountains of
so
Madness.
so we had
Or,
played
oh
a
yeah,
couple
yeah,
of
yeah. I
times, and
remember this one. Yeah, yeah.
we did very badly. So we kind of sat down and we said, okay, like we know how to play this game now, so this is going to be our strategy to work together to try and like not screw this up this time. And we got 20 minutes into the game, and one of the players just immediately abandoned the whole thing.
Mm.
And I was like, well, maybe that's like his insanity thing or something. So the end of the game, we lost horribly again, and I was like, "What happened? Like, what was your insanity? What caused this?" And he's like, "Oh, no, nothing. I just totally forgot what we were doing, so I just stopped doing anything." uh,
Yeah, I've not played that one. I know the game. I've seen the game, but actually, that's one of the Lovecraftian games I don't have.
it's an awesome game as
Mm.
long as you have a team that can remember what you're doing for 20 minutes.
My favorite Lovecraftian board game is Arkham Horror Second Edition,
hmm I have
and
Betrayal in the House of the Hill, and I have
that's
Mountains of
quite
Madness.
good.
I have not played Arkham Horror yet. My brother has a copy, but
I would avoid third edition if you have the option, because second edition was just amazing. It's bloody long, but sometimes you've got to play a 1 day or 3 day if you're playing Talisman. A game, just take a whole weekend and eat pizza, and hopefully the parents are away, and just get your mates round, play for 12 hours.
yeah, I mean, that's, kind of how I do most of the games is that like once a month I throw a dinner party and I cook like crazy and then we sit around and play games all day. So, Norseman says that we need slice and dice eclectic goat t-shirts. I have no idea what that would look like.
Or look like a shirt with a face on it.
um, but anyway, so what I was getting at was the idea of a board game that is not cooperative and has an unusual, like different kind of board and has replayability. Like those three things together are pretty hard to find in a board game these days.
Mm-hmm.
They're either not replayable, like there's some good games out there, but once you played them once, you played them. Like you can't ever play them again because you already know how they go.
Yeah, a variable boards is one possible, but the other is you don't play with like the entire game. Like Castles of Burgundy is a really good two-player game because you only play with half the game at a time. Half the pieces never come out, and you don't know which half are actually going to come out, and you also don't know the order in which they're going to come out. So that's my wife and I have together played Castles of Burgundy about 50 times because it's got that replayability for 2 players.
Yeah,
If
it's a
you
good
play it with
classic.
4, though, you use all the pieces, and it's not as fun. It's not as unpredictable.
Also,
Yeah.
the more players you add, then the more the longer the game's going to last. Obviously,
Yeah,
because everyone's got to have the same amount of time for the turn. So you just adding half an hour or 45 minutes per player each time. So there are different games have different sweet spots for the number of players. That is not necessarily what it says on the box. So like the job I lost to the pandemic was one of my favorite jobs. It was shift manager for a board game cafe that was a really
ah,
successful little venue in downtown in the centre of Bristol, and a great place that had probably getting on for 800 board games along the wall. People would pay like a cover charge to come in, and we had a license and a kitchen, so we could do food and
yeah.
drinks plus a board game.
Grab
And
a hot cocoa and sit down.
yeah, coffees, teas, beers, wine, you name it. And we lost a lot of board games to spilled bottles of red wine, which was heartbreaking. But it's a business, so
Yeah.
that was half of the course, really. Hold on a sec, just getting a phone call.
Oh no.
My fiance, she's in LA. I said I might be up, so
I take it
Tell
she
her to
uh,
didn't
tune
understand.
in.
I take it she didn't understand that you would be up because you were doing something.
no, I did tell her. She probably forgot, to be honest. But where
We were
was
talking
what was
about attention spans, right?
yeah, I can't remember. The bell wiped my mind.
Okay. Quest for pizza. My wife picked up one of those pizza rockers instead of the pizza cutter that you roll along. It's just one of those wedge shaped rockers. You just drop it right in the middle and rock it left and right, and it cuts the pizza. So, but we're crazy pizza people. So,
Um, so do you have any thoughts on, like, are you going to continue with this, or are you
Well,
just kind of mulling it over in the background, or does the enthusiasm from the crowd
yes,
make a
it
difference?
is it is kind of inspiring. I think I've so I obviously I invested a lot of emotional sort of energy into this, developed some skills that I didn't have previously to sort of try and get this vision prototyped, and then hand it off to someone who can actually draw. But um, I guess I've been a bit precious with it because I didn't want to send it into Irongate and sort of hand it off because I figured, well, they've got their board game now, but I've got this which can be repurposed for something else. So potentially, in the future, I could do something with it. But it's the industry is just impenetrable if you haven't gotten an in or an agency or something. If you're an amateur developer, it's really really hard. So I think you're probably best off looking at self-publishing, and you've got to be you've got to have some nous business nous, which is probably not me, but and understand crowdfunding, the need for quality components, and whilst I've backed probably 350 plus Kickstarters over the years, I have been burned on a few, probably 4 or 5 projects where I've lost out completely.
Wormy Spoons wants to know how to send you a pitch for a galactic space quest conquest version of his map of your map idea.
That sounds good. Yeah. So if you were, I'll
You're
drop
on
my
Twitter, right?
email. Yeah, I am actually. Now you come to mention it. Not, yeah. So at not Greg Phillips, double L, 1G. Let me.
Eraserhead's got you covered.
Okay, you got me. Yeah. Send me a DM. But yeah, it's more. I bought a lot of materials, art pens and things like that, and quite a lot of money on craft project basically. And so I think that probably that with the cards as well, because I you can get quite interesting. You can get like blank board game components quite cheap, so you can actually prototype stuff pretty cheaply. Like, so for instance, the combat dice. I've got some here.
Yeah, you can even use office supplies in
Yeah,
some cases.
literally, I did. I just
Yeah,
went up Hobbycraft and bought like defensive dice um, with various faces.
the Viking
Just
shields.
come
Yeah,
up with your symbols for the different meanings. So ranged. So I got basically different. It's really difficult to hold dice up on camera, isn't it? But
yeah,
basically, different coloured dice for ranged, melee, and defense, with different symbols on each one in different proportions to one another to make sure that there's some sort of tactical variation with various strategies depending on how you like to play. You could maybe do 3 wounds from ranged combat before you even get into melee combat, or you may not have a ranged weapon, in which case you might be more of a berserker style and have different armor and weapons. So yeah, there's quite the variation um, with various parts of it. But the ideas came from Talisman. Really enjoying Talisman, but understanding that there's some problems with the mechanics in that game. Um, and as I said, Vikingar, which was the circular world map, had sort of shown me that you can do that. But then also Carcassonne is one of my favourite board games
oh
with
yeah.
the tile based map building aesthetic that really inspired me to sort of say, well, you make a circular tile based map. And it turns out you can.
Yeah, Carcassonne is in my collection, and my wife gets very upset when I, as she puts it, steals her cities.
Mm, yeah. Yeah, I've got, I think I collected for the first, the older edition, every expansion that was ever published anywhere on Earth apart from one promo tile that was for some Russian uh, convention, and they would produce a promo tile for that one thing. You had to go there to get it. Or
And yeah, the
and eBay
licensing is
don't do
pretty much.
Russia. So
Oh, okay. Licensing also like varies from nation to nation. So in Germany, you can get like Star Wars Carcassonne.
mm, yeah,
um,
yeah, they've rebranded it a number of different times, just using
uh,
that sort of basic mechanic. There was I had several different Carcassonne games. The Hunters and Gatherers one was great. Um, I had that one for ages, and they just did one edition, and it was really popular, but it didn't have many expansions or anything that came out for it. And so I was sitting on that for ages, thinking, "Oh yeah, this one's worth a bit of money. I'll be able to sell this one day." And then they did a
oh,
second edition, so it's like, meh. But there are actually people that collect Carcassonne just as a board game collection,
yeah.
just on its own. So I'm
Mine
probably
is
one of those
the
people.
winter edition, which I think are actually much more attractive tiles
Mm,
than the regular edition. The snow and the frost covered rooftops and things like that. I think it's a
mm-hmm.
much more attractive edition than the green.
It has the advantage that if you can get like 3 or 4 base sets and just chuck them together, and as long as you've got the you can't use every tile. You've got to get the proportions for like the monasteries compared to the cities and
Yeah.
so on worked out. Take a few tiles out, and then you can play on a table tennis table or something and just play an absolutely massive game. So it's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Anything else you think that we should know, Greg, or otherwise we'll.
Um,
Mando is
yeah.
still not here. Apparently, there was a downed power line.
Oh,
Um, nope. And the Norseman has to take off. I hope you have a good night.
Yeah.
yeah. I think that's about it, really. Unless there's anything you can think of. I mean, like literally, it's just a hobby project that I've got here, but I think it's got legs. If anyone knows a board game publisher, tell them to get in touch.
Well, like I said, my understanding is they're expecting those board game prices to go up a lot, which should encourage people to be printing games closer to home.
Yeah, why not?
So I think
you
the
design the
3D
games and send all of those designs via email to China for them to develop. So if you're getting a boost to the manufacturing economy, that means that a large proportion of a big sector, globally, business-wise, gaming is bigger than movies and like music. So, board game is a massive slice of that. And if you're getting 40% of that moving to the States to get around tariffs, then that's going to be great for American board game companies. And as luck would have it, eventually I'm going to move to LA, so I'll be in the country.
My goodness, all of you are moving over here. You're moving to LA, and Tomby's moving to
Tennessee.
I was going to say somewhere in the Midwest.
And I think Smooth's got designs on Texas.
Nobody wants to come to my neck of the woods. Now I'm sad.
Where is your neck of the woods?
New England.
Oh, I definitely want to go to New England. I want to soak up the Lovecraftian vibes of the mists and find the
yes, what we are known for.
And
you can get some
go
good
fishing off
Lovecraftian.
Innsmouth.
You can get some good Lovecraftian tones on the West Coast, especially if you get near Washington with those like really old trees.
Yeah, I'd like to have a look at the Appalachian Mountains as well.
Oh yeah,
some great campaigns set in that area for various games. There's a big folk tradition, isn't there?
Yeah, lots of cryptids and things like that here.
Yeah, I'm always interested in good settings for
Mando popped in and then disappeared.
RPGs.
Oh, am I still not here?
You were here, and then your camera went away.
Oh yeah, I've been having camera issues, so I'm here though.
Hello.
Hello.
She is here as a voice.
I am here as a disembodied voice.
Okay. There's a lot going around.
Hey, it'd be what it'd be. I might have to use my backup camera, but we'll see. We'll see.
Eraserhead says, 25 degrees is hot for me. Also, Goat, why doesn't anyone want to move near me? I didn't say 25 degrees was hot. I simply said I didn't need a jacket.
We talked in Celsius and Fahrenheit. Yeah.
That's what I was about to ask.
25 degrees is summertime here. But that's
Celsius. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think you are in Celsius though, and we're not. And it's not 25 degrees. It's, let's see. At 30 I don't need a jacket, and at 40 I don't need a sweatshirt. I had a t-shirt on doing chores today, so.
When I was last in California, it was like January or something, but it was still getting up to 90. So it was pretty hot. 90 Fahrenheit.
Yeah.
Yeah, Eraserhead understands. This is the only proper way to do maths.
I'm having to try and learn both, and it's doing my head in.
Hey, JJ. Welcome. Whoops.
Yeah, it was
90 degrees. Gross.
Gets up to about 108 or something in the summer. So
I will say the humidity here in the summertime can be pretty miserable. You hit over 90 degrees with like 80% humidity levels, and that can be kind of rough. Especially since we do not have an air conditioner.
Oof.
All right, so we're going clockwise, and Mando has managed to jump the line here. So, Mando, you want to tell us about Wingspan? Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
I think Mando has disappeared completely.
It's Dave's time to shine.
All right, we're gonna remove her. Dave's gonna start, and then I'll add her back in again.
Okay. Well, I'm not designing a game. Wait. It shows offline. Okay. Well, I'm not designing a game. I'm playing a game. And the theme for this episode was G, and I think the last time you had a G-themed episode, it was GURPS, which is fitting because GURPS being a generic system, I've been summoned to talk about Genesys, which literally is shorthand for generic system. Pretty easy. It's currently published by Edge. I don't know how up you Greg, you mentioned Asmodee
Yeah.
earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know how up you are on the moves around that happen in that company sometimes. So originally, Genesys and also its sibling Star Wars game, Narrative Dice System, were both published by Fantasy Flight here in the States,
Mm-hmm.
but Fantasy Flight was not able to publish it economically enough to make a profit. And it was actually hurting them. So Asmodee said, okay, we have this publisher in France called Edge, who's good with books. And Edge says, hey, this is great because now we can get Star Wars RPG in French. But the bad news is though, like because of the pandemic, all the books were piling and piling up in France, and they couldn't get them on the boat into the U.S. until almost 2022. So there's been kind of a shortage, and the original Fantasy Flight books are almost collectible now as a result. But it's kind of worked out. I do have a copy of Genesys with the Edge logo on it, but there has been some quirks because apparently some of the English Star Wars books will occasionally have 1 or 2 pages in French by accident. There's been some publishing quirks.
By accident. I wonder how one does a foreign language by accident.
Well, I mean, the printer with the French is right beside the printer with the English, and the way you assemble the pages is in sheafs. So if you have the centermost sheaf, it gets folded over in half, and then it gets assembles with the other book. So a lot of times it was the galaxy map that would end up in French. It's a book making books. Interesting topic on itself.
Yeah,
but
I've watched some pretty good crafting channels.
Oh, those are addictive.
Bookbinding there's one guy that made a book-bound D&D rulebook set. All of the blocks put into one leather-bound book, and I think
very addictive.
Nerdforge has done something similar.
Yeah, he has the vice, I think, and he has those shavers that work off the edges of the pages.
Those videos are like 4 hours long for the whole process. I watched every minute. I was geeking out.
Yeah.
Nerds nerding out. What is that?
Yeah.
Unapologetic.
But Greg, you showed off some dice with symbols on instead of numbers, and that's kind of central to the narrative dice system, and also because Fantasy Flight can trademark the symbols, which is profitable, and it keeps other people from making copies of them. Yep. But so the way the narrative dice system works, if your audience is unfamiliar with them, you create your character. You have ability scores, typically a number between 1 and 6. And then you have skills, which are also numbered, so kind of between 1 and 6, but you don't get to roll everything altogether. So like ability score dice are green and they're D8s. But skill dice are proficiency. They are yellow and they are D12s. So there's a lot more options on them. But you don't get to add the two of them together. The yellow ones replace the green ones. And when I'm the GM, of course, if a player says, hey, can I roll deception to do a thing? And I say, yes, the difficulty is 2 purple dice. So my dice are purple. I hand them a pile of D8s, typically between 1 and 5. But if I decide, hey, this is extra risky, I'm going to replace one of those purple die with a D12 challenge die, which is the inverse of the proficiency die. It comes with a little bit of extra danger. And there's also like blue positive circumstance and black negative circumstance die, which are called bonus die, and what's the other one called? Setback dice. Now you don't have to buy the dice at all, though, because Fantasy Flight has a roller app that you can just free throw on your phone. Also, there's RPG sessions online, which Nate uses. You saw the video that I posted to him on that one Discord server. He's been using that for his system. And there's also, I run on Foundry VTT. It has a really great dice roller for that, and also a Star Wars specific system.
Yeah,
but
I've
you
used Foundry before.
Oh yeah, Foundry's great, and the dice so nice die roller with the narrative dice system. It's not just a D20 rattling around on that tabletop. It's like 10 dice in different colors and symbols just piling out, and I tend to think of it as the dice interpretation process is described in the book. It teaches you kind of how to look at the symbols because there's success and failure, which offset each other. There's advantage and threat, which offset each other. There's triumph and there's despair, which are two separate things. They don't offset each other. If both of them come up, they both happen. Um, but go
You
ahead.
have a question from Stunt Gonzo, and I don't want to lose it up in the chat thing because I have not yet figured out how to
Was an
highlight
early
things
version of
properly.
Genesis what FFG used for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay 3E? I am actually not sure. I think they used the D100 system. They stuck with it, but they just upgraded like the artwork.
No, that's so
No?
third edition. They reimagined the game. I actually am in the. I was playtester for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay second
Oh,
edition and third edition, and so I've got my names in both rule books. And the third edition they introduced your stripped down character sheet plus odd symbol shaped dice
yeah.
in various combos, plus cards which were equipment and abilities that you would add in. So it kind of tried to take it from a straight pen and paper tabletop role playing game and board gamify it so that it would be more accessible. And I absolutely hated it. I
Oh,
hated
yeah.
it. I don't have any Warhammer Fantasy third edition. I've got first. Second,
If you're not rolling d6s with a Warhammer game, you're playing wrong.
yeah.
But Fantasy Flight has tried other narrative dice. I know Legend of the Five Rings has a completely separate dice system unrelated to that.
Yeah. They've got quite a lot of different, like, engraved, what I would call engraved dice or symbol dice in all of their board games as well.
Oh, yeah.
Well, maybe not all of them, but a lot of their board games, like Arkham Horror, I think, has got some.
It's an excuse to sell dice, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And people love dice. I've got 2 jars full. Who doesn't have 2 jars full of dice?
Oh, yeah. Just to kind of give an example, so let's say a classic fantasy role play activity, sneaking into a walled city. So if you just name a skill that you think you would use to sneak into a walled city.
Climbing.
Climbing. Okay, so in narrative dice, that'd be an athletics check. So if you didn't have climbing gear, for example, I would give you a setback die. But you're climbing a sheer wall. If you have equipment, that works out okay. So I'd say that's probably like an average. So I'd hand you 2 purple dice, and you'd roll your brawn and athletics skill combined. Your yellow and green dice and the 2 purple dice. And let's say you got success. Success or failure determines whether or not you go over the wall. But advantage or threat induces other things. So say, for example, you rolled success but a threat. So great, you get over the wall. That works. Prophetic,
There
we'll
are
get to
spikes
barbarian.
on the end of the wall now.
Yeah. Or you left footprints on the wall that someone else might see later in the game without you realizing it. Or you lost a piece of your climbing equipment and now you can't get back over later on. That's what threat would induce. Or actually, despair would be even worse. Like you get to the top, but your climbing gear breaks. You can't use it at all until you replace it. It's something especially bad. But let's say you rolled advantage instead. We could say, oh, you find a spot with handholds that you can show to your friends that make it easier for them to climb up the wall now. Or say we rolled a triumph. Triumph can go pretty crazy. Like say you get to the top of the wall and with your success and you roll a triumph and there's a guard on top of the wall, but it's like your best childhood friend from that you knew years ago. Oh, hey, I haven't seen you in forever. You're climbing this wall I'm supposed to protect, but maybe not that outlandish.
No. The
yeah.
triumph would be the guy at the top of the wall. You happen to have pictures of him sleeping around on his wife.
Oh yeah. But
that
you
is
as the
much
player,
more likely to keep his loyalty.
there you go. Because as the player, you actually get to pitch advantage and triumph to me, but it's kind of aligned with the skill a bit. So honestly, that particular triumph would be more like streetwise or something like that. But you kind of get the idea. When you roll advantage or triumph, you as the player get to pitch narrative changes to the GM. But when you roll threat or despair, the GM kind of gets to pitch narrative changes to you. But on the opposite end, let's say you fail. You don't get to climb the wall, but you roll an advantage. Um, let's say you find a spot that might be easier to do at night, so you lose like some time, but you can climb the wall, but you lose time, for example. Let's say you fail but roll a triumph. There's like a kid at the bottom who sees you trying to climb the wall, and he manages to say, hey, wait, there's actually a secret passage that you can use to sneak inside, that sort of thing. Failure with a threat, the guards spot you, and they'd say failure with despair, like the guards could even catch you. So it's a little more granular, a little more detailed than just say rolling a d20 and the d20 working or not working, or having a critical success or having a critical failure.
Yeah, I've not tried that system, specifically directly. So it does sound quite interesting.
It is. I've been running it for 4 years using Star Wars, the Star Wars games, which are kind of a sibling to Genesis. I am working on an original Genesis setting. We had a planet we went to in Star Wars that was kind of made up that the players loved because the planet had been enslaved by sorcerers who were actually Force users, and so the players freed the slaves the best way they knew how, by distributing guns. But we may run a Genesis based game in that setting just for fun. But you've talked about climbing. These effects are actually vary by skill. So say you want to lie your way past the guards, that'd be deception. If you rolled, say, advantage, maybe they'd let you bring someone through with you. If you roll a triumph, maybe you become friends with the guard, like he becomes a regular contact for you. But if you roll threat, maybe the guards whisper to each other, hey, maybe we need to keep an eye on that person. Or maybe if you roll despair, you get through, but someone else coming through who has a proper pass spots you, and maybe they want to get a favor from you because they can blackmail you. And so depending on what skill you use to get into the city, you could succeed or you could fail, but those narrative effects depend on the skill you choose. It could be. It could be. I think FRP 3 might have been like a predecessor to Fantasy Flight's narrative dice system.
Yeah, so they did invest a lot in the development of it, but it wasn't very commercially successful. And they did like a base set and expansion boxes with various other components in that you needed to get, the campaign box and various. So it never really took off. It never really found its legs. So they probably, scrapped out those mechanics ideas that they could salvage and use in other games.
Yeah,
to sort of reuse them.
For sure. But Genesis itself is kind of setting agnostic. It gives you some basics for creating like your own species or races or classes, or just rudimentary setting development guidelines. They do offer pre-made settings, which are often based on Fantasy Flight owned properties, Twilight Imperium, Terranoth, which is based on like Descent, Runebound, Rune Wars, Battle Lore, those sorts of things. Android, they can't call it Android Netrunner because Fantasy Flight lost the Netrunner license. A lot of that going around with Fantasy Flight. They lost Netrunner, they lost Games Workshop. It's kind of strange. And Keyforge, which was that weird randomized card game. I don't know if either of you
remember. Oh, yeah. I remember when it came out. I did buy a base set.
Yeah.
But you'd buy a deck box and they would be randomized in the deck box. So you'd get like that deck.
But like the individual cards themselves would have unique names and the decks would have unique themes. So every single deck was different. But as a side effect of that, some of the decks had obscene names or very obscene themes. You can look those up online if you want. And Fantasy Flight had a program where you could trade one of those in for a more conventional set. But those really offbeat, obscene, or quirky decks, they're actually kind of collectible. They're one of the rare instances of the Keyforge sets actually developing value. There's sort of a Twilight Imperium. It's a supplement to Genesis, so you have to get. The good news is like Genesis, the core rulebook is about $40, but you can do PDF for like $20, and then you can just grab the Twilight Imperium setting for it.
It can be hard to find the dice, though. That's a problem.
You can get the dice roller for your phone, or you can run it on RPG sessions. Especially if you play online, RPG sessions will actually integrate with Discord. There are Discord commands to roll dice using RPG sessions, and it'll do all the addition and subtraction for you.
Yeah, I don't mind them if I'm
Hmm.
like running a game on Foundry, but if I'm running a game in real life, letting people roll dice on their phones, I have found can run into some issues with certain types of players.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah.
You know, when you can't tell if they've hit the roll dice more than the roll button more than once. I wanted to ask, so I never really got into the Fantasy Flight games. I know lots of people that did, but I have recently been trying to find the End of the World series,
Hmm.
and they are incredibly difficult to find. I
The
just was
role playing
curious if,
games.
yeah, you can find like the Rise of the Machines on eBay for like $140. And you can't find, oh my goodness, he's probably got them all.
Yeah. The side effect of the scarcity aspect of board games and role playing games, especially with out of print stuff like that. There you
That
go.
Yeah. So I started to say, Greg, that the Rise of the Machines is on eBay. There are 2 copies for $140 a piece.
Wow.
The other 3 books
Ooh.
you cannot find anywhere.
They
I
really take
like role
advantage of the
playing games.
scarcity. Yeah. The especially the Kickstarters and things like that, they really aim for the scarcity aspects, because the Kickstarter is going to say, okay, 10,000 copies. That's it. You know, maybe we'll
Yeah.
find a publisher, maybe we won't. But if you don't get one of those 10,000 copies, maybe you get to play it with a friend, or if not, that's it.
And
My
this I've never played any of these, but the idea of it really appealed to me, and that is that you start with your role playing group around the table, and they're playing themselves sat around that table, but they've got a
mhm.
character sheet,
Meta.
and then the end of the world happens, and they have
Yeah.
to survive.
I
And these are
really
scenarios.
Yeah.
The Book of Revelation. You get to live through find out what happens to you with the Book of Revelation, various alien invasions, and
Aliens.
This
Yep.
one is the Rise of the Machine, or Revolt of the Machines. So yeah, I thought that they would be great for one shots. When I
Yeah,
found out about it.
I desperately want to run that game, but my husband, before we got married, apparently saw it once in a bookstore, uh, and for the first time in his life, did not pick it up. Um,
Oh.
which
If
is
you just want to
amazing.
look at them too, like occasionally there are YouTubers. I ran into one named Freddie, who runs RPG Gamer, that channel. He'll actually do page throughs of the source books he's picked up. It's not a high enough resolution to where you can actually learn the rules, but it's enough where you can go back and see the art book and get an idea of the gameplay. And he talks kind of about his experiences, and that was useful for me. I was thinking back to my old Stevie Ray Shadowrun games, and kept thinking, wasn't there some graffiti related to Stevie Ray Vaughan in that for some reason? Anyway, I'm a guitar nerd now somehow.
Mm-hmm. I grew up listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan amongst
Oh
other
yeah,
people.
there is artwork of him in first edition Shadowrun.
I remember Shadowrun. That was a TSR cyberpunk but fantasy, wasn't it? Elves.
Fatha. Yeah.
Second
Yeah,
edition was
yeah.
the best.
Elves
Second,
with cybernetic implants and gnome
second,
netrunners and shit.
yeah, second
Yeah.
edition was by far the best.
But in the
I
original first edition Grimoire, there was a guy casting magic spells on his Gibson guitar,
Mm-hmm.
which is intended to be Stevie Ray Vaughan. And in the Grimoire second edition, they don't show his face in the second edition because he'd passed away in 1990. But in the second edition, yeah, they see there's a guy with that loose fitting shirt that he always had in the Fender Stratocaster. So there's little tributes to him in first and second edition.
Well, that kind of idea for a series, that could keep me going for some time. I've got I've got loads of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't
love
have
trying to
any
run a-
D&D though.
Yeah.
I think I might have the Lankmar Advanced Dungeons and Dragons supplement.
Yeah, I
Is
still
that-
have a lot of the old AD&D stuff, but I got rid of all my 5e because I was like, that's it. I'm having absolutely nothing to do with Wizards of the Coast ever again.
I unfortunately got rid of all my AD&D stuff, which my brothers had bought, so I had first edition of everything, and even some Judges Guild stuff. And actually, now Goodman Games are redoing a lot of the Judges Guild. They're reprinting and expanding the Judges Guild third-party modules that they used to do for Dungeons and Dragons, and I've been picking up a few of those so that they're just historical pieces more than anything. Tegel Manor was a big mega dungeon, which they've redone, and so the Dark Tower is one that they've repackaged as well, which was they used. Oh, the Thieves' Fortress of Badabaska, I think it was called, was another mega dungeon that they've redone as well. All of these are book names from when I was knee high to a grasshopper in the 70s.
If you're lucky, yeah. Stun Gonzo pointed out you can get so there's some out of print things that you can find on Drive Through RPG as PDFs sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I do love books, though.
I do.
Books are amazing.
The
I
other
have
thing
also
is,
got the Realms of Chaos from Warhammer. There's two volumes that they did, Realms of Chaos books that were for the battle game, 40k, and for the role playing game.
the other thing is that the in real life game that I run is on Saturdays, and we don't have electronics on in the house on Saturdays.
Ah.
So having PDF books isn't great unless I can like find somebody to print them and bind them for me. And the other games I run are on Foundry, so they're just kind of automatically there anyway.
Oh yeah.
I run about 3 games a month right now. I'm thinking I may need to add in a 4th if I can find time though, because there've been like 5 people recently that are like, "Oh, I haven't had a chance to play in ages. I can't get a group anymore."
Oh, I know,
Yeah.
I know people. I know people.
I'm hoping that when I get to America, I'll be able to get down the local game store that I've been to in the LA area and meet up with some gamers out there.
I like the
Where did
idea of live gaming, but Foundry is just so streamlined.
I
It
will
must have
say
improved a lot.
it has. I hated
Mhm.
online gaming during COVID.
Yeah.
It was choppy and the sound would cut out and the dice rolls didn't work. Foundry has gotten very good, and it's $50 for a lifetime membership, and almost all of the materials on it are free unless you want something like really fancy schmancy.
Yeah. And occasionally it goes on sales around the holidays too. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
haven't
if
picked
I'd
up
been
any
s-
of the virtual tabletops, although I've got the board gaming one.
Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah.
That one's pretty popular.
Oh,
That's
and the
it.
Game Master is the only one that has to have Foundry. None of my players
Yeah.
actually have it.
Right, yeah, that's the one of the games I'm going to be joining soon. The DM has Foundry, and us players just upload our character sheet and just go with it.
Do they support Goodman Games stuff like Dungeon Crawl Classics and
Probably.
Mutant Crawl Classics?
I mean,
Because that's
Foundry
my system nowadays. Is
Foundry
Goodman
has
stuff.
City of Mists, which is much more obscure than Dungeon Crawl Classics, so I think probably they must.
And if they don't, I don't think it'd be that difficult to like upload it or finagle your way or figure it out.
Let's see if I can look for this without totally crashing my system.
I got it. I got you. I got it searching now. Dungeon draw. Well, the problem is you type in dungeon. Let me type in classic.
You type in dungeon and it's just
Yeah,
all
yeah.
Wizards of the Coast.
375. There we go. Classic fantasy companion. Dungeon Crawl Classics. The Portal Under the Sun. Dungeon Crawl Classics.
Have you
Servers
played
on
any
Double-
Dungeon Crawl Classics? Any of you?
I have
Nope.
not.
Highly recommended.
Yeah, my husband, who does not normally run games, bought it and is reading it because he actually wants to try running it, which is
It is
new.
so much fun. You are going to have a blast. If you've
The
got
mod scene for Foundry is huge. So yeah, of course they
And-
have it.
So it's Dungeon Crawl Classics, and the system, itself is basically old school feel AD first edition AD&D, but with a modern reimagining.
180.
And they've added extra polyhedral dice to the dice ladder up to a D30. So you can get D22, D24, so on and so forth. But they've also done the lower 10 in single digit increments as well. So you get effectively two new sets of dice that you can combine in different ways, and then you can spend skill points temporarily to boost your dice a grade up or so forth. And then you can do this. There's a mechanic in there called spell burn, where you burn your attribute points permanently to boost a roll by praying to Cthulhu or something, whatever your deity
Very
patron
70s.
is, for a boon, and you might end up with a withered leg or something like that, which you've then got to carry with you through the rest of the campaign. But you get a really powerful open-ended sort of 30-sided dice to get like a crit on the combat tables. It is so much fun. Highly recommended.
Reminds me of the classic D&D vampires. Like, they wouldn't just drain your health; they would actually consume your levels.
Yeah. And it's been so, like, I am the forever GM. I mean, I can count on one hand the number of times I've played in the last 15 years, and they've all been one-shots. So
High five.
I refused. People have asked me, because I've played several different Pathfinder and D&D games and stuff, and they're like, "So you've been playing for like years now? What if you DM'd?" And I said, "F you, F your mom, never, no."
See,
no.
I love running. It is kind of my outlet for all of the crap in life. It is the one creative thing I'm actually good at, is world building. But once in a while,
I refuse. You can't make me. No. I'll be like associate or assistant DM. Like, I've done that a few times where I'm like, the DM doesn't know this particular rule set or blah blah blah. Help you, but don't make me have decisions and do things like that.
Oh,
I
plus
don't
the-
want
One
it.
thing I love about one of the things I love about GMing is ad-libbing encounters, just off the cuff as you come along, and creating characters just out of thin air as the inspiration comes to you, because you can only do so much preparation and hold so much in your head. You just need to sort of have a folder of characters or stereotypes that you can combine to sort of pull a character and breathe some life into them.
yeah.
Yeah. So basically, my only creative skill is bullshit, is what we're saying.
Yeah, that's a great creative.
Your skill is imagination.
Yeah.
If you can't stop making characters, just be the GM.
Yeah.
Yep.
I did used to do that. I must admit, I'm going to make a new D&D character, but I would roll 10 peasants before I got a hero. And that's one of the reasons why I like Dungeon Crawl Classics, because they were like, everybody who's getting into role playing will just sit and make characters all the time. So what we do is we use all of those characters. You start as a level 0 character, and you have 4 of them, and you go into a meat grinder funnel of an adventure, which will decimate the team and whittle it from, say, 30 characters down to maybe 4 or 5 survivors. And if you get out, you get 1 experience point and you become level 1, and that's your character for the campaign. So that's a really refreshing one-shot sort of approach to how people can build their backstory and so forth. Because if they start off with a dead chicken in a sack and no skills, but then become a hero, they've sort of really participated in sort of in the progression of
Yeah.
that.
I'm a big fan of the old school, like, you don't start off with a 20-page backstory, because then where do you go? All right. I want to make sure that we still have enough time for everybody to plug their stuff at the end. So, Mando?
Yeah. So I was introduced to this game by a friend of mine who lives in Minnesota. And she and a couple of my friends, I don't know what it is. Like I surround myself with people who are into bird watching and granny activities like gardening and knitting and crocheting. And they're like,
Hey. Those are granny activities.
Fine.
Practical activities.
I understand that. That's fine. I'm just not into any of those things. And so, when she came down to visit, it was like last year or something. Rock all everyone's dice. She was like, "Hey, so like, I really love bird watching because I garden." I was like, "Oh, that's cool." She's like, "I found a board game about bird watching." I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. This is fine. It's great." But it's actually a pretty like fun game, especially if you don't know anything about birds at all. The point of the game: get the most points. And there are different like cards, and there's different dice. It's a card. It has dice, and basically you have to like spend resources to get birds and like eggs for the birds, and like there are different habitats for each bird. What card you draw like is. I'm getting ahead of myself. Sorry.
You're also crackling a little bit, I think, because you're talking really fast.
That's just because my mic hates me and it can't handle my awesomeness.
Well, I mean, who can really?
Thank you. I tend to tell people that systems can't handle me as a person. But what do you know? $200 on a microphone and it does this. That's fine. So basically, you have habitat like forest, very wet habitat, and you are supposed to get a lot of birds, and when you get lots of birds, you get the resources that the birds like food and water, and you also can lay eggs on, which is a very weird concept in my opinion. Like I'm like, oh, I want my bird to lay an egg. But
I'm sorry, you skipped out there for a second. You said you can lay eggs? I can hear you, but I did just get a weird thing about adding your mic to the to the
I'm not
scene.
seeing the blue outline around here at the. There we go. So maybe do.
I can hear
yeah,
you, but
you're
is
off
that because
the-
I can hear the backstage?
There we go.
okay.
Ta-da!
The heck? I didn't even press any buttons. But yes, you can. Oh, there is someone who's heard of this game.
Yeah, I've never heard of it before.
It's like
in
an
my
award
life.
winner.
Have we not figured out that any game we mention, Greg is going to pull off a shelf somewhere?
I had never even heard of it. Maybe you can explain this game better than me. I just
like
thought it
Greg
was a really
Macau.
cool.
No, you're doing great.
Ah!
MACAO, you got it?
She's
MACA
just
Macau.
she's just hoping to get out of the explanation, is what you're saying.
Well, because like I thought while playing it, it was a fun, interesting, informative game because I don't pay attention to birds. I just look at the pretty birds and go, "Oh, that's so pretty." I don't know that like it's a blue. Just wing it. I don't know that that's a blue jay and it can only like lay 3 eggs and it's only in this environment. Wow. Yeah, mics are pretty flatty. This, especially my mic. My mic is trying to fly away on
Sounds
me.
better now.
I think it's
cool.
I think it's more that he just knows I despise puns and is therefore making as many as possible.
But another thing, and I don't know if you are aware of this.
Extreme.
It has expansions now. Recently, there's been lots of expansions, and there's also a dragon version of this game called Wormspan.
Yeah.
Okay, I did not know that one.
I've got the link here. Hold on.
Well,
I don't
He
have
doesn't
that
have.
one.
Wait a minute. You don't have the game? What's
I
wrong
don't
with
know.
you?
the
I've
Warp
not played it
Span
either.
like only I think came out like last year, but also like the
There you go. It's in
Wing-
the private chat in AV.
Wingspan itself came out like in 2019, I think, from somebody in like Maine, right? Let me look that up. I think it was Maine or Massachusetts. It was some M state.
Some M state.
Yeah, some M state. I could be completely wrong. Let me actually look. Maryland. It was. It wasn't M state. Maryland. That I'm excited about. I actually kind of want to get that one because it's dragons, and dragons are better than birds in my opinion.
I think you're
Different
right.
designer,
I
that's
mean,
interesting.
Wingspan's a cool game. I really enjoyed it. It's got
You
some
can-
great
it's also an
components
app.
with it. It's what?
They have you can download an app for the game on your phone, like it's online.
Yeah, I've seen it on Steam
I think
too.
it's on Steam. Yeah.
Oh,
The problem with it though, if you buy it on sale, whenever a board game is on sale on Steam, it's usually a sign that the player base has fallen off. Unfortunately,
I mean, it's
That's
it's
just when
bird
you have to.
watching.
That's just when you have to find other players and make them play it, which is how Mando gets sucked into board games. Apparently.
Yes, that is exactly how I got sucked into. That's how I got sucked into Settlers of Catan as well. But my friends only had the German version, so like that's how I first learned how to play Settlers of Catan was in German. Ja.
I feel like I should be able to come up with a joke for that, but there are just so many possibilities. I can't pick one.
I'm not sure what wood for sheep is in German.
I don't remember, but I remember giggling every single time that I would pick a wood card.
Oh yeah,
I am a child.
We used to hear those jokes quite a lot down the.
I was going to say, is it just because it was in German, or was it just, or was it because of wood? Period.
I think it was the word. Let me actually look up the word. What is the German word for wood?
Holz.
Holes?
Holz for Schaf.
Holes? Oh yes, that's why. That's why it was
Okay,
laughing.
Holz for Schaf.
Yep, that is even
Yeah, we'll
more
do it.
12. That is even more 12-year-old ish than wood. Period.
Right? Every single time I would pick up a card, I would just giggle. Everyone knew how many cards I had. They're like, "Why are you giggling, Mando?" Oh, nothing.
Your poker face is showing again.
She has no poker face. I'm pretty sure we knew that from day one.
Exactly. Poker face? Pa! Pa! You just know what I have in my hand because I'll be like, "Oh, look, I have 5 cards that equal 5. Yay!"
I think we ought to get Mando and Roman into a game of Tune.
Oh, I bet that'd be
Toon,
fun.
man, that was so much fun.
Roman's like, the only thing I'm good at in gaming is dying, and I was like, oh, Tune, perfect.
Well, also, like, I wish you wouldn't have.
RPG.
Yeah.
I wish you wouldn't have I need to tell him about Wingspan. I think because he's an old man, he could be like, "Oh, look, the pretty birds."
Such a big
Yes.
deck to play with, though. The bird deck.
Well,
The
that's why they've
thousands
added
of cards.
expansions.
Yeah, you just end up with a massive. I have to when we play Talisman. I have so many event cards that I can make a deck like that high. So I have to split it into 4 and put them around the table so people can draw. From
You all heard it here. Greg has a big deck.
I do.
Wow.
I keep it in a box. So large, it's got its own box.
I almost just spit my water out.
Sorry.
Very good, very good. I mean, hey, you can lay eggs in this game, so.
One of
It
the
is-
things I like to I've seen people do, and I quite like, is if you really get into a board game, you can get upgrade components from third party. I've got a friend who's
Oh yeah.
I think he bought little jelly worms and things like that to sort of go with the various resources in the game and little mice things. And he had there's a hotel game that he had where he got like cake slices and bottles of wine and cups of coffee and pastries from dolls sets and put them
Oh
in his
yeah,
game components.
little,
It was
little
really, really
dollhouse
cool.
things. Yeah.
It really pushes up the price, man. If
Oh
you
yeah.
do that though.
A popular thing with 3D printers is to make textured Catan hexagons.
Mhm.
Like they'll actually make a proper mountain textured hexagon or Catan tile
I would
or forest
literally just
textured.
hold
Yeah.
the tile in my hand the entire time, just being like, "It's got texture."
Yeah.
Be like, "We need to play with that." No, it's mine now, my precious.
It's probably pointy because it's made of plastic, but yeah.
Amanda,
Legos.
how much caffeine have you had?
None. This is how I am normally. This is just me.
No. I saw you on Jacob's show yesterday. You were not nearly this hyper. Of course,
Well,
that was 2 hours later, but
yes, but also I was distracted during Jacob's stream. I was putting the final touch. Don't tell Jacob this. I'm sorry, Jacob, if you hear this later. But I was putting the final touches on the thing that I showed you guys at the end of the stream.
okay.
So I was like,
You were
doing,
multitasking.
Yeah, I was multitasking. Whereas right now, you have my full, undivided attention.
Well,
You're-
don't
you're-
tell Tomby,
you're
but I was taking the photos for Goat during the previous podcast when I was making a cup of tea. I was like, right, set that up, take the photos, boil the kettle, make the tea.
I mean, you weren't sleeping, so that's a good start.
No.
Right? So like, tell me being a dumb American, and I understand this. How is one supposed to make a proper cup of tea?
Depends
Because
on the tea.
I just microwave my water in a cup.
Oh.
And I know it's wrong. I know it's
Ow.
wrong. So I actually have a kettle now. But
Yeah,
normally,
They're
That's
wonderful.
a step up. Goodness.
Thank you.
Like, yeah, I mean, most
Ramen.
American households don't have kettles, do they?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can do ramen with a kettle, with electric kettle. You can do oatmeal with electric kettle. It's really
I
good.
will say electric kettles weird me out. I'd much rather have my proper heat required tea kettle.
It's all
Mainly,
boiling.
well, I
I'm
lose.
sorry.
I
just want
lose.
hot water.
No, I know. I don't let it get to boiling, but I lose power a lot, and so like still being able to make a cup of tea on the wood stove is kind of important.
Yeah,
Oh,
we
of
had a
course.
power cut the other day, and like I live with my father, so he's like 94 and he's had a stroke, so I'm
I drink
a full-time
coffee.
carer. And we had a power cut, and I had to go out and get a camping stove and boil a pan of water just so we could have tea during the day. I was like, I'm not putting up with a day without tea. No.
So I used to live. I live in the boonies now, but I used to live really in the boonies, and like when we lost power, it was up a mountain on a dead end road, and we would lose power for weeks at a time.
Mm.
So wood stove cooking is something I got real good at. having a tea kettle you could put on the wood stove to make tea or coffee was absolutely vital.
Well, I make coffee like with a coffee maker. Like I am a coffee snob connoisseur. Like as far as coffees go, I now have a French press, a pour over. I have my own grinder for the beans. Like I'm working on getting an espresso machine. So like coffee, absolutely, I understand. It's the tea aspect of it. I am recently getting into drinking tea because apparently what my doctor has said, and this is what my doctor has said, that drinking an entire pot of coffee is not good for my health.
No.
Okay, did I not just ask her how much caffeine she'd had today and she said none?
So how I've been doing it is every other day I have 3 cups of coffee, but on the days that I have no coffee, I'm fine because I have caffeine left over from the day before.
That sounds like
You-
binge fast.
Yes,
You do realize, by the
So
way,
you're seesawing.
you do realize, by the way, that all of the fancy machinery doesn't help if you buy crap coffee.
Oh, of course. I do not.
I know
My
an
local-
amazingly huge number of people that have all the expensive toys and then use like chock full of nuts.
No, I have a local roastery I go to, and I get the beam. I'm that kind of snobby when it comes to coffee.
Yeah. I always say that I have no toys. I don't splurge much. Like, I have goats and I have my coffee. Those are my
Well,
expensive.
the,
Those are my
the
expensive hobbies.
Very
funny
wise.
thing is, I personally bought my French press, but everyone else just gets me coffee things for Christmas and like my birthday. They're like, someone has a problem. We're gonna enable them.
All right.
As one does.
It is 9 minutes of, and Greg is looking like he's about ready to keel over.
I did wake up at 5:30 a.m. today.
I have to say, your energy level stayed up really, really well
We're
until
talking about games.
until about 10 minutes ago, and then all of a sudden I
Yeah.
could just see the crash. So
What
It's
isn't
like-
it like night over UK?
It's 10 to 1 a.m.
I mean, close.
Yeah. But I normally,
s-
I'm old, and I normally go to bed at least 11, sometimes 9:30.
yeah, he's the one person I know from the UK that actually sleeps. Okay,
Can't be all
so
up for hours.
yeah, he never sleeps, and neither does Lance. Okay, so Greg, why don't you tell us what you got coming up, where we can find you? All those things are in the description, but
Yeah, so I haven't put any content out on my channel since like July or something, but there are playthroughs on there. I've been doing a few podcasts with Tomby on a weekly basis. That's the one that I'm sticking with regularly, and I occasionally co-stream with Mr. Porkchop 14. Quite a few of the chat will know that channel. So yeah, just keep an eye out for me. I don't know. I'll be on Tomby's podcast on Wednesdays. That's probably the most reliable place to find me. And on Twitter, you can, if you want to chuck me a message, it's at not Greg Phillips.
will you be putting out content on your channel again at some point in the future?
Yeah, I think so. I hope so. I do intend to. It's just that I think I got bogged down with, recording. I wanted to do a complete playthrough of Zombie Army 4 co-op. What's my favorite edition? I think second edition, but I haven't played fourth edition yet. I mean, I did.
Letters.
So, first edition, I ran the Enemy Within campaign twice, and that was kind of epic.
What do the letters mean?
Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
Warhammer.
So,
Oh, okay.
Warhammer, but the fantasy world setting, but the role-playing game rather than the battle game. But it was good because your role-playing character, you could go through the whole campaign, but then strip down the stats and turn it into a hero with a figure on the battlefield and play out the final battle between chaos and law.
Interesting.
With your character on the field as a battle. If you had the miniatures to do something like that, which I never did. Yeah, so that's what I've got coming up. See you next Wednesday.
Okay. I do want to, since he mentioned Tomby, I do want to give Tomby an extra little special shout out. He is the reason that this entire setup exists, and he was the person that helped me figure out how to stream and convince me that I should do it. So
He built my PC by hand.
Yeah, he is quite the tech guy.
He's the dude. He's the dude.
Mando, where are you going to be? What you going to be doing? Where can we find you?
You can find me just about everywhere. I'm on X or Twix.
She gets around.
I get around. That's exactly right. I mean, it's not. What can I say? Like, I go to jail. I start a gang. I get a prison lover. Stuff happens. But yeah, you can find
in real life or role play now.
No, I actually went to jail over a dumb thing. But I didn't
Really?
actually. So the lore is I started 2 different gangs. I have several prison lovers, and the lore just keeps growing. It's great.
So the jail part is real life, and the rest of it is role play. It's just an ongoing role play.
Exactly. But yeah, I'm on Instagram, X, YouTube, Kick, Twitch, Rumble. I'm on Discord. I'm all over the place. I love playing different games. I love hanging out with folks. I'll be on our friend Roman of the Empire's channel tomorrow, and the Scissor family will be reunited. And for those of you who don't know what that means, you should watch Roman of the Empire's channel to understand who and what the Scissor family is. You're the person from Orange is the New Black. You know, I had stripes instead of orange. The stripes are not flattering, and my mugshot also sucks.
There is so much lore that goes with Roman's channel that you could listen to it constantly and still not know what's going on. So.
Yep. I'm a member of the Scissor family.
It's a whole thing. Hey, Bendover was here, and we totally missed him because he was lurking. It was still good to have you in the background.
Hi, Ben.
Okay, Dave, where can we find you? What are you up to?
I am only on YouTube. You can find me as your GM on YouTube. I make cartoons, animation almost exclusively, mostly about tabletop roleplay stuff. I'm finishing up a series on campaign formats. Like if you're trying to pare down the type of work you want to do for a campaign you want to run, that series is designed for you. But I also have things about how different authors might run RPG campaigns, and a lot of my channel is I just do whatever I feel like doing. Like I took audio from a Red Letter Media cartoon and combined it with someone's art from their subreddit, and so like Mike Staklos is a bear, and so it's just him as a bear talking. But probably the biggest project I ever did on my channel is I remade Hot Fuzz, but as a Warhammer 40k cartoon.
Nice.
All of the characters are replaced with Warhammer 40k characters.
Nice.
I finished that early last year. It took me 4.5 years.
Wow. I thought I was being clever making a board game prototype.
Well, I mean, the pandemic hit, and I found myself a lot of extra time during the day. So I was like, because originally I was just going to parody like the one scene where Nick gets kicked out of the London Force, and then I just did 2 or 3 other scenes, and then the pandemic, I thought, you know what, I'll just do the next scene, and I did that, and couldn't figure out what to animate next, and I figured, you know what, I'll do the next scene.
Just keep going and
yeah.
going. All right. Well, thank everyone very much for coming, chat and panel. This has been grand.
Thanks for having
me. Yeah.
Chat, we got mainly a variety of mythological names as categories for goats. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to throw out as an option?
Was the Eowyn suggested, I assume?
Well, I was looking for categories because I don't know how many babies I'm going to have yet or what gender they're going to be.
I saw the Lord of the Rings suggestion. All I could think is Balrog, get off the tin roof.
I was thinking more like Samwise.
I mean, realistically, I think that could still be counted as mythology.
Oh, wait, most of the a lot of the livestock in Lord of the Rings are already named, so you could have like Bill the pony, but a goat.
Shadowmare,
yeah.
I did once have a cat named Mouse, so you know.
Oh, okay.
I knew a guy who his previous cat was named Worms, so cat named Worms. So.
Wormy, I already have a cat named Freya, so that one is probably out as far as the goats go. Though a goat named Freya
is a great name for a cat.
Yes, the black.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
And it's a white cat.
My fiance has a pair of cats. One's black and white, and one's black. And when she got them, I was like, "What about Ancalagon? That's such a good name for a cat." She was like, "What the frick?" she's never read Lord of the Rings or anything, so she was like,
For shame.
So we recently got Rex rabbits, and our first litter is also due in a few weeks, and they are all getting Watership Down names.
Oh, pro wrestler names could be fun for goats and sheep.
That could be funny, but it might make sales difficult.
Oh, okay.
Hmm.
You know.
Who wants a slice of Mick Foley? No.
I've got to say, as somebody who read Watership Down and saw the animated movie, it was a tough watch as a kid, but, I think character building.
There are a bunch of Watership Down clips in my latest video, and I was kind of going back over them going, man, I forgot how rugged this is.
Yeah, it's a bit of a kick in the balls, to be perfectly honest. But
Wormy wants to know when there's a goat called Tangerine. That actually is a pretty cool name.
Wow.
So I am the Eclectic Goat. I am here on Twitter and on Discord under that name. I just dropped a video, my latest in the underappreciated 90s television series. It's on Sci-Fi Tech. It was kind of part of a two-part series. One was, alien invasions, and one was this latest one is on Sci-Fi Tech. So I also recently did a couple of collabs with Lord Toxic. One is on my channel, which is the book versus movie for Hannibal. And one was on 500 Days of Summer, which is on his channel. Just for a little bit of contrast. 500 Days of Summer versus Hannibal. But those both dropped recently. And let's see, where am I going to be? I actually don't think I have anything until Sunday, when I will be on Sammy Three Pete's In Other News. And then we will be back here for shows you've never seen. In the meantime, I am plugging away at the next planned video, which is going to be the history of zombie movies. And the research on that is probably going to take me a very long time. So my goal is to have it out for when 28 Years comes out, and I'll probably have some projects out in little bits and pieces in the meantime. Yes, Goat Tech Edition. If you haven't given it a watch, please do so. Even parts of it, I did divvy it up into the shows people might actually like, depending on what they've seen and what they hadn't seen. I do have to say that for that project, I discovered a show called Harsh Realm, and it's amazing.
I saw that episode, yeah.
I do not know how that show got so overlooked, because it's awesome. I liked it a lot. Yes, and our Supermod Eraserhead is on shows you've never seen. He has stepped out from behind the chat to actually come and talk with us, and everyone is jealous because it turns out he has a very sexy voice. So.
Ew.
They're like, it's no fair. He can't be a supermod and sound that good.
Ew. I mean, I have a voice for television.
I've got a face for radio, so.
Yep.
Somebody told me once. They said, when you're like really in the vibe, you have a voice for radio. And I was like, yeah, and that's all I have for radio. Everything is for radio. I have a face for radio too. Okay, so again, thank you very much to everyone. We are going to play our little outro. And hopefully we will see you all back here on Monday. Happy headbutting.
Choo-choo-loo.
Bye.
Rather well.
Meet me at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the Eclectic Goat, and I'm here to gab with you. We'll talk about immersion, adventure, heavy lows, characters and story, warlocks and barbarians and bards, comedy or horror. We got inspiration if you're in need of it, or just need to hang out somewhere cozy. They're the guys for you, we've got time for you. Come and join the crew, here's what to do. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.